Again, if you haven't checked into On Campus, please do that. Uh, while that's happening, if you've already done that, please check over your number 18 in the homework. Um, Everything that you see here is exactly what I would expect on a test. Okay, so all of this work is exactly what I would expect to see on this upcoming test, which we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes. All right. Um, so everything from here, basically everything unboxing, um, that is all to be done by hand. So you have to find the determinant of a matrix by hand. Then you have to set up Cramer's rule, and this can be found uh, in a calculator. All right. So top in the box, that's done by hand. Bottom in parentheses, that's done mostly in a calculator. You can do that by hand if you want, but that's usually going to take a little bit longer. All right. We'll go over number 19 here in a second. Before I do that, I just want to make sure people know what exactly is going to happen. Um, so we'll go over homework. I'm going to make sure you understand Cramer's rule first. Then I will give you the practice test, which is already up in On Campus. I'll go over any questions over that, um, and then that's really it for today. Um, in terms of the test, okay, so our test will be on Friday. Uh, we will have I'll regenerate another practice test on Wednesday, and then the test will be Friday. For the test on Friday, I will give you the test probably about 15 to 20 minutes before class actually starts. And then it'll be due 15 to 20 minutes after it ends. All right. It will be, you'll see the length here in a couple minutes. But you will have the entire period to do the test, take a picture of the test, and submit the test. And I will show you exactly what kind of work I see over the next 2 days. Okay. Um, Homework seems to be being submitted really well. Thank you all for doing that. I realize it's a little bit different, and I realize it's it's just kind of a different thing to expect in a math class, but it's been working really really well. Um, on the homework, just a couple of things that I've noticed. Make sure you take the determinant very very carefully. There are a couple people who are mixing up signs here and there, which is making the entire problem wrong. I'm not taking off entire points for it, but just something to note coming up on the test. But overall, the work looks good. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you the next like minute or two to look over 18. As you do that, and as you have questions over just number 18, put them in the comment, and I'll do my best to explain them. After that, we'll do number 19 step by step. So take a couple seconds, write out your questions, and check over 18. Okay. Since there's no questions on number 18, we'll do number 19 step by step. The first thing you have to do on number 19 is just to get the coefficient matrix, which I have written right here. Okay, so that's A. And we need to take the determinant of that matrix. So in order to take that determinant, we have to repeat the first two columns. And then we have to multiply the diagonals together. So then we get what's in blue. And then we have to subtract that from the diagonals in the opposite direction. And honestly, this is where most of the people will screw up on the determinant. They'll get all the numbers right, they'll get the order right, but when it comes to all of these negatives, some people just mess up slightly, which is okay. Just make sure you do it correctly and maybe check it on a calculator. But when you do all of this, you should get 38. So before we move on, are there any questions over how to find the determinant of this 3x3 matrix? All right. Next step, we have to set up an equation for x, y, and z. So this determinant, yeah, it should be 34, sorry. It ends up being negative 4 plus 38, which is negative 30, which is positive 34. Yeah, it should be 34. Okay, so this number, that's our denominator for x, y, and z. So x will have a denominator of 34. Y will have a denominator of 34. And z will have a denominator of 34. And then the numerators, we have to get the determinant of those matrices. But first, what I'm really expecting is just you to be able to write them out. All right, so these matrices will have just their x column for x will be replaced with the answers. So negative 9, negative 15, and negative 11. Everything else is the exact same from the coefficient matrix. So in the for x, we're replacing the x column of the coefficient matrix with the answers. Okay, for the y value, we're replacing the y column with the answers. And for the z matrix, we're replacing the z column with the answers. And then everything else is the exact same as the coefficient matrix. I'll explain that here in a second. All right, so I'll explain homework and the tests here right after we go over this homework. But for now, just focus on this. All right. So again, this is all the work I would expect to be done by hand. All right, and we need to take the determinant of each of these numerators. When we do that, we should get this. So we should get x is equal to -1, y is equal to 4, and z is equal to 1. Okay, so you can go into a calculator and find these parts circled in green without having to find each determinant by hand. Okay, so again, I'm going to give you a couple minutes or a minute or so just to look at this and see if you have any questions. You should know that this is exactly the work that I would want to see. Okay, so you find a determinant by hand, you set up Cramer's rule, and then you find the numerators on a calculator and then simplify. Okay, so that is exactly what I'm expecting. All of this is exactly what I'm expecting. So take a minute, see if you have any questions. If you didn't do it quite right, correct it, and then we'll go on from there. Okay, so the practice test, this can be found in on campus in the topics matrix and systems of equations, and it just says practice test on it. All right. Um, the expectation is that you should be able to do this without notes or without help. Okay, and there are a couple of different types of questions. There are operations of matrices. So we have to be able to add matrices together. We have to be able to multiply by a scalar, and we have to be able to multiply matrices together. All right, which are the first 3 questions on this practice test. After that, we have to be able to use elimination for a 3x3. We have to be able to use Cramer's rule. And then we have to be able to solve a 2x2 system in any way that you know how. Okay, so this test is going to look a little bit shorter than most other tests. Okay, because I just want you to be able to do those 4 types of problems and show me that you can actually logic your way through it. Okay, so right now this test is looking like it's going to be 6, maybe 7 questions. But that list on the right, that's what I'm expecting you to be able to know. All right, so what's going to happen is I will post this test right at the beginning of class or slightly before. And then it'll almost be like the homework the last 2 days, where you will do this, take a picture of it, and then submit it to on campus. And I'll have a couple of different downloads available for you, so you can download several different things. And you'll have a time limit to do that. Okay, obviously you guys have a lot of resources around you. There will be a time limit, so you can't like look up the answers and then copy down the work. All right. A word on submitting, don't make it a Word doc. So don't take a picture, copy that picture into a Word doc, and then submit it. It worked okay when I was trying to correct things, but there were a couple people who like I could not see their writing very well. All right, so just submit the pictures as JPEG. It makes looking at it a lot easier. All right. So before I let you kind of look at this practice test for a couple minutes. Are there any questions over what I just said? The time limit will be just the class, so a full block. So you have 70 minutes to do these 6 problems. And I will give you a regenerated practice test on Wednesday. Again, the goal is that you don't actually have to look anything up. Um, you write it down step by step, and then you submit it. There will be basically you submitted it before. So how do we turn in multiple pictures into on campus? Um, I'm guessing that you're just going to be able to add on different downloads. So the first homework that there was only an option for one download or one upload. So a lot of people posted several pictures into a Word doc and then submitted that Word doc, which is fine. It worked okay. But I'll have like 4 or 5 uploads available, so you shouldn't need to do that. My guess is that there's a little like plus button, and then you're able to upload something else. Okay. Now, I would like you to actually go find this practice test so you have it on your computer. I want you to look over it for a couple minutes. And then as you kind of have questions, if there's any specific questions, I want you to ask so I can go over it today. And then we'll go from there. Okay, so take the next 2 or 3 minutes, look over this practice test, get to the practice test, look over this practice test, and then let me know if you have any questions. Do we need to show work on all of them? Yes. So I realize that you can do most of these in a calculator pretty easily. That's not what I want. All right. I want you to show step by step exactly how it works. So for these addition problems, that's probably what you're asking. Um, like elimination, obviously you have to show work. Kramer's rule we just went over, and then the 2x2 system, you have to show me what's actually happening. My guess is that you're talking about these first 3. Uh, so for the last class, I actually did go over these. So I'll go over these, and as you guys have questions, just put them in the comments, and I'll go over them as they come up. Okay. For number 1, that has to do with adding and subtracting matrices and then multiplying by a scalar. Okay. So with adding and subtracting matrices and any operation on matrices, order of operations still apply. Okay, so the first order in order of operations is parentheses. So we have to simplify this in here first. So if we do that, when we're subtracting matrices, we are just subtracting corresponding terms. right? So -6 minus -5, 1 minus 5, -2 minus 1, and so on. All right, so if we have -6 minus a -5, that's just -1. 1 minus 5, it's -4. -2 minus 1, that's -3. -1 minus a -6, that ends up being +5. 0 minus 6 is -6. And then 3 minus 5, that's -2. Okay, so the first thing that I would expect on a problem like this is just this step right here. Okay, so every operation there is, that should be a step that I see. Okay, and then after we subtract, we have to multiply by this scalar 4. All right, and when we do that, when we multiply by scalars, that scalar just distributes to everything inside the matrix. All right, so 4 times -1, that's -4. 4 times -4, that's -16. 4 times -3, that's -12, and so on. And then this would be your answer. For number 2, I would still expect to see 2 different steps. Do the first 2 first, and then do the third. Obviously, your test is not going to look exactly like this. These problems will be slightly different. But the general rule is every operation you see, show a step. All right, so if we're just doing that inside the box, it's -3 plus 5, that's -2. -2 plus 5, that's 3. -1 plus 3, that's 2. And then we can show what this is actually equal to. So -2 plus -1, that's -3. 3 plus 2, that's 5. 2 plus -1, that's 1. And then that would be your answer. And then on number 3, again, every operation gets its own step. All right. So in number 3, the first thing we have to do is simplify everything inside parentheses. So when we do that, we get 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times -6, that's -18. 3 times -4, that's -12. And then we have these two matrices being multiplied together. And then in order to do matrices, the first thing we need is to get the dimensions of each. So this first matrix, this is a 2-row by 1-column matrix. The second matrix, this is a 1-row by 3-column matrix. And then to see if they're even able to be multiplied together, the first thing that needs to be true is these two numbers need to be equal. If those two numbers are equal, then there is a defined product. Okay? And our product's new matrix is going to be the outer two terms. So we're going to have a 2 by 3 matrix, a 2-row by 3-column matrix. In order to get each of these elements, I usually look at their coordinates. All right, so this top left-hand element, that's first row, first column, then it's first row, second column, first row, third, and so on. And these coordinates tell you what to multiply by. Okay, So first row, first column tells you to multiply the first row by the first column. First row, second column tells you to multiply the first row by the second column. First row, third column. Second row, first column. Second row, second column. And then second row, third column. So then your actual answer would be this. Can you go over number 4 by eliminating the y first, then the z second? I mean, you can eliminate any variable. You can eliminate x first and then z second. It doesn't, there's no like perfect way to do it. You just have to choose one variable and then eliminate it. So I would eliminate y first because the first and third equation have the same coefficients. So that's really an easy one. But it doesn't matter. You can eliminate in any order you want. And elimination overall in the homework looked really good. So I'm kind of happy where everyone's at on that. Kramer's rule, I'm still looking over that. And then the 2x2 systems, that should be pretty basic. Okay. So if there are any other questions, I'll leave this open for a couple minutes. This should be a really straightforward, decently easy test. I will regenerate this for Wednesday. What I would like is for you guys to actually try this every single problem and then come back and we can actually talk about it first. Then I'll give you the second practice test and prepare you just a little bit more on how Friday will look. Okay, so I'll leave this open for a couple of minutes. As you have questions, just type them in the comments. Otherwise, after that, I will be in Teams to answer kind of more specific questions. You do not need to submit the practice test. This is just for you guys as normal. But I strongly, strongly recommend you being so familiar with it that you don't need notes or help. You should also know that the answers to all these are actually in that document if you just scroll down. But yeah, no, you don't need to submit it. You need to be very familiar with it though. Okay. So I'm going to close this. I'll hop over to Teams And if you have any like really specific questions that I can help you with, that would be the place to ask. All right. So I will see you in the next couple minutes if you have questions. Otherwise, I will see you on Wednesday.